Guys and gals, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Sam with Sam's Mobile Sharpening out of Battleground, Washington. In this week's video, I want to go over not really go over, but do a 1-year review of the Harbor Freight 1x30. It's at least a little bit over because I should have done it in September, but regardless, let's get to it. Okay, so a little bit about my 1x30. It's the, I believe, 2023 model. I bought it back in September of 2023, the beginning. And now it's October, mid-October 2024. So this one has a motor that is 2.3 amps versus the newer Harbor Freights. I'm not sure what 2025 will hold in store because they release a new one every year, or at least that's what the store's associate told me. So the 2024 model has a 3 amp motor, so uses a little bit more power, and haven't really done a fair comparison over 2023 versus 2024 model wise, but I've been trying to use this to point where it breaks, and it just doesn't break. So eventually when it does, I'll give you an update on that, but as of right now, runs flawless. And I'm going to dive in a little bit closer so you can see some of the upgrades that I've done to it. They're completely not needed, but at the same time, I did them because, one, the work that I do, and two, I like upgrading stuff. So let's dive down and I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so now that we've dove down, you can see this doesn't look like your stock Harbor Freight 1x30, but typically it'll look more like that. So firstly, I built the frame because I wanted it to be more ergonomic and horizontal. So built the frame just out of scrap wood and mounted it to it with just bolts, nuts, and washers. It really wasn't terribly hard. Took me a better part of maybe an hour. Other things that I upgraded, one was truing the drive wheels, which if you're familiar with the Harbor Freight 1x30s, you know the wheels aren't very true, so it kind of like wiggles around the belt when it's spinning. A lot of really good videos on how to true the wheels. I would highly recommend that as far as something to do. I was gifted the drive wheel for the sewing machines, which I shimmed with a soda can and made it so it works with the stock Harbor Freight motor. And that's the biggest thing. I want to see how long this Harbor Freight motor lasts. I could care less if the pulleys break or anything along those lines. I want to know how long that motor's going to last. So, changed out that drive wheel, and mostly this was just a fun upgrade to see, okay, does it make any difference? It does cut down on the noise a pretty good bit. So yeah. And then the knife angle guide, which I also use an angle cube for determining the angle I'm sharpening at, because these angles on the side or the markers are not accurate, or they're accurate to some other thing that is not knife sharpening related. So yeah, other than that, I don't think there's much I've done to it. I mean, it's pretty much stock. I mean, stock motor, stock pulleys. I mean, I even went back to the stock spring, which I'll actually talk about that too. So I've switched from the weaker spring that I bought to the stock Harbor Freight spring because I'm no longer using the leather belts on the 1x30. And that was the biggest problem with the stock spring, is it would stretch out leather belts almost instantly, which it still does even with the weaker spring. So I've gone to using a hanging strop or even my Tormek for my stropping process now. So went back to the stock spring, works great, and it keeps the belts more taut so that they don't jump around, and also they're a little bit quieter too, just with that little extra pressure. So yeah, but let's dive back up and I'll talk about a few of the things that I want to do and am possibly planning on doing. And if you've made it this far in the video, first off, thank you so much. And if you're not already, consider subscribing. I do these kind of videos where, whether it's a tool review or even just sharpening. So if you're into like knife sharpening or just fun adventure-y kind of stuff, hit that subscribe button. Okay, so some future plans for this guy. One is I want to make a new frame because it's not very ergonomic. So typically when I go and lift it, I lift it like this, which not terribly ergonomic or anything along those lines. So I want to weld together a frame that I can mount this to, because then it'll have basically like a little carrying handle in the front and allow me to pick it up that way, and the weight will swing more towards me. Other than that, I mean, eventually when the motor dies, I mean, I have the secondary one that I'm going to go to when this one breaks, but this is kind of my experimental test bed of just seeing how long components last and that kind of stuff. So when that motor eventually dies, I'm going to take it off and see about like a sewing machine motor or something along those lines. I just want a variable speed motor, or even maybe just like a single speed motor and just slightly bump down the speed, because in all honesty, I don't need the speed behind this, but being able to play around with like how fast I'm going would be really fun. The problem I have with the sewing machine motors is me being mobile. I like having this as a nice compact little package. So with the sewing machine motors, it's got that secondary control module, which, I mean, I could probably mount to it or something like that, but that's an extra component that I have to lift and carry and that kind of stuff, and have to worry about the wires probably fraying or anything along those lines. So I'd prefer to find a motor that is almost like self-encapsulated, kind of like the bench grinders where they have like adjustable speed bench grinders. I'd like to find something like that that works in this case, which might never find that, but at the same time, that's something I would wish for. So, yeah. But other than that, I mean, this is a very solid machine. I've had nothing but good luck with it. It's started up every time I've needed it to. Hasn't given me any hiccups. So, yeah. Also, before you go, I wanted to talk about one of the most important parts about your 1x30 is the sanding belts. So for me, I use aluminum oxide belts for my higher grits, and I use a ceramic belt for my lower grits. Sorry, that was a squirrel just jumping all over the trees, making a pretty good ruckus. But if you're sanding different materials, make sure to look up what belts work best, because in some cases, like using a ceramic belt may not be the best for you, and using an aluminum oxide belt might not be good for you. But at the same time, like, it all depends on what materials you're sanding. So I would highly recommend doing a little bit of Google research and seeing, okay, like if you're sanding wood, what the best ones for wood are, or just what application you're planning on using your 1x30 for. And until next time, guys, stay happy and healthy.